Greetings YouTube, and welcome to my new... I don't know what to call this. It's a weapon, but it's also going to be a piece of armor. This is going to be a buckler. I'm going to turn this 14-inch circular saw blade into a buckler. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as my boss. This is just a standard restaurant stainless steel mixing bowl. I picked it up at a restaurant supply company. That's going to be the boss in the center of my buckler. This is going to be eventually going to be the handle, and I'm going to cut a hole in the middle that big. And I'll put the strap this way and wrap it so that it's a little thicker. It's about an inch thick. It's not particularly thick steel, inch wide, but not particularly thick steel. So I'll wrap it so it's more comfortable and it's a little bit larger. And I've been thinking about this for quite a while, but how the best way to attach this to the rim isn't very wide. If it were bigger, I would probably just use straight pop rivets. The problem is that it isn't bigger. So what I'm thinking of doing is taking these. These are, what are these things? These are whole ground wire straps. They're 1/4 inch whole ground wire straps. I'm thinking of taking these, opening that hole up to 1/4 inch, and then using them on this lip and tightening them in place so that they will provide enough force to hold this in place. And I'm probably going to use 8 of them when I'm done. That way I'll have force coming in, 8 different directions. So that definitely should hold this thing in place. And there isn't going to be a lot of force this way because the impacts would be coming from the outside. So that shouldn't be much of a problem. And I'm going to do all of the marking and highlighting and everything layout on this side. This side's got a better patina. I kind of like that patina a little bit better, so I kind of want that more rusty edge to be the outside of the buckler when I'm done. So I'm going to do all my layout, and this is also smoother. It'll be easier to write on. So I'm going to center this and circle it. Now, going through something like this is not easy. Saw blades are like Rockwell hardness of like a 50 plus, 50, 55. So it's not easy. But I have a special drill bit designed for die drilling, and it'll handle a Rockwell hardness of 65. So what I'm going to do is, once I get the circle here, I'm going to drill a series of holes. Once I figure out the diameter of the hole cutting saw I'm going to use. And the hole cutting saws I've got, I have a number of different ones. I have ones that go from 3/4 inch all the way up to 2.5 inches, I think. And there is a drill bit at the center of each one. It's a 1/4 inch in size. So I'm going to pre-drill all the holes for those 1/4 inch drill bit. The reason is that the drill bit on my hole cutting saws is just a standard titanium gold colored twist drill, which is not going to handle this all that well. But the hole cutter itself is carbide tipped, just like the drill I'm going to drill all the holes with. So I'm thinking if I do that, the drill bit on the hole cutter will go through the center of the hole, which will act as a stabilizer and keep it from vibrating. And then the carbide teeth should be able to handle this particular material because it's a carbide tooth. So it should be able to handle this, and then I will cut holes out and then use my angle grinder to cut the little bridges I've made, knocking the center out, and then I'll clean it up with my grind off wheel and then a flap wheel so it's clean and smooth and not dangerous to the hand, which will be in the center like this. So my hand will be right there when I'm finished. And they'll have a big space in there because that's where the space will be. Right now, my fist will be able to fit into that space quite comfortably. That's a little bit larger than I really wanted, but I couldn't go any smaller than that, I think, and get my hand in there. A boss should probably be a little bit more shallow than this, but this is $2.50. So I can't go wrong with that price, you know what I mean? And a buckler can be many different sizes. They can be bigger than this, not by a whole lot, because it was supposed to be a dynamic one-handed shield. They can even be smaller than this. In some models I've seen that were like only 10 inches in diameter. They were mostly almost essentially a boss with a very thin edge, and they were still quite useful. They're for blocking, for pinning, for capturing an enemy's limbs. They can be used in many different ways. This one is also going to be able to be used to cut with, because it has an edge which is sharp. Also, it should be able to catch blades on the teeth, so it becomes sort of a blade catch as well as a buckler. Could be useful in and of itself, as opposed to a standard round buckler where you could block with it, but the enemy's edge is not going to catch on it. This might give you a little bit more control of the enemy's incoming weapon. Who knows? I'm never going to actually fight with this thing. So the first thing I need to do is draw that circle, figure out what diameter hole cutter I want to use, and then start marking out where I want the holes to be, so I can then drill the pilot holes with my special carbide 1/4 inch die drilling bit. Yeah, that's a tongue twister right there. So, time for some layout and then for some drilling. So all the holes are now drilled, and I am going to use this bit here to go through those holes there with the 1/4 inch drill bit in the center, so it'll just kind of feed in like that, and then we'll cut some holes. Some of these are probably closer than they need to be. I may skip some of them. We'll see how it goes. I may not. I laid this out mostly by eye, because again, this is all going to go away and going to be a big gaping hole, so it didn't have to be perfect. I gotta tell you, this die drilling bit I've got here is an absolute game changer. Though it really bugs me how the pricing on Amazon works, because when I ordered this drill bit on a Sunday, all right, and I got it, I paid 16 bucks, 16 and change. I got it on the following Friday. Awesome. Or yeah, it was delivered. I picked it up Saturday. I had it sent to a locker, which is safer that way. And I went and looked at the price on the following Sunday, so I could tell a friend of mine, my friend Mike, a weapons collector, that this was a solution for him for having, drilling hard steel, which is a pain in the butt if you're working with a lot of scrap stuff. You never know what the hardness is. And it was 25 bucks already. So it went up 9 bucks in a week just because there was interest in it. Capitalism drives me crazy. The one thing I did have to do is I had to set my table up at off-centered. That's one of the slots in here, because I'm dealing with a big object, so I couldn't go through the center of my table. There was just no way to set it up. So I skewed it to the side, and I came through one of the slots that this thing is sitting in like that. But that's no big deal. So now I'm going to try to figure out how I'm going to center it, because I need to center it over the center to get that hole drilled, because I need that to go. It's going to be a pain in the butt. I'm going to have to move this or do something, because I need to get that drill bit over the middle, because that way I have a place for the drill, the hole cutter to go through. At the moment, I don't. I don't want to drill another hole in this thing to achieve that end if I can avoid it. So, may have to move this, may have to maybe not use it, just use clamps this time, because this may not work, because I may have to fill up this entire table with Sawblade. This is a big object, it's 14 inches in diameter, so I'm really kind of pushing the size limit of what my drill press can actually drill through. I had to step down quite a bit, because that is the only bit I've got that will fit through the center hole. So I've got to come up with some kind of a block I can put on this. It's going to have to be metal, because I don't want it to, I think wood will get so hot it'll burn. So I need to come up with some maybe an aluminum block that's going to have a 2.5 or a 3-inch hole in the center that I can then bolt to this plate that will let me use the full range of hole cutting carbide bits I've got. At the moment, the only one I can use is this one to get through that center hole, and that kind of limits my entire selection, which is the reason I bought them. Now, even with carbide, this was a bitch. It always starts out nice, But once I get through the initial oxidized layer and I start to get to the stuff in the middle, it's harder than hell. And even with carbide, I drill them halfway through one side, flipping it over, drilling halfway through the other side, and then it's peck, 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 just literally pecking my way through it, chips at a time. It's a major pain in the butt. So I've only got 5 holes. So what I'm going to do is the line's on the other side, but you get the point. I'll be drilling this, I'll use a hole, my angle grinder with a cutoff blade to go boom, boom, and just create V's, which will then cut out this section, and then I can start nibbling the leftovers off with the cutoff blade till I can't nibble anymore, and then I'll start using the grinding wheel to get the rest off, till I get to the point where I'm happy with the overall shape, and then I can bring in the flap wheel to refine it, and then of course deburr it, because I don't want any burrs on this, because this is where your hand's going to be, so you don't want burrs there. So yeah, this is all I'm doing for today. I'm tired. I've been down here for like almost 2 hours working on this. So I drilled a bunch of holes I didn't need. Live and learn. Didn't hurt anything. Just took a little time. And I'm going to use just these 5 to work at getting through the center of this by, cutting out the rest. So next week we'll be getting the angle grinder out, and I think I already have. Yeah, I think I got that cutoff wheel on there already. So that'll make things easier. And just start whacking things off, getting this cut out, and so I can start refining the hole. And once that's done, then I can start laying out the holes for the clips. And 2 of the holes that will be used for the clips will also be the holes that I use to hold on the handle. So they're going to do double duty in that regard. So I'll be using slightly longer bolts for those. Those 2 will be bolts. And the other I'm going to be using 8. So I can't decide if the other 6 are going to be bolts or going to be pop rivets. I may do bolts because I got a bunch of those acorn nuts left. So I think the acorn nuts would look good along with those little clips I've got, if I can make the little clips work. But the whole bag of 50 was like under $3, so it was worth an experiment to see if I can actually make it function. So yeah, that's the stage we're at next. Cutting out the rest of the hole, and then starting to figure out how I'm going to actually attach my boss. Here I've made the first 5 cuts. I just put the saw blade in my vise, and I put it dots where I was aiming at, and so I just came up to those, and in this angle, because it's the easiest, I'll flip the blade around, and now that I have a target, I'll just go from the edge to the other one, and hopefully the entire center will just go boop and fall out, which is kind of my goal. I'm also trying to preserve some of these holes, because I actually have an idea for them. So I would like to preserve some of those if I can, at least 1 or 2, because I want to try something out. And those are the size hole I need, so it means I wouldn't have to drill another hole to try something out. That would be just the simplest solution. So flip it around and make the 5 remaining cuts, and hopefully that centerpiece will fall out. We have a hole, and we have a very crappy ninja star. In it, I have preserved some of the 1/4-inch holes, which will make my next step a much easier process. So I'm quite happy with that. Well, not next step, but the next step is going to be to clean up this. So I may try to clean a little bit up with the cutoff blades, like if I can nip some of these tips off, clean that up a little, and then it's going to have to be getting the grinding wheel out and just hog it out, that stuff in the middle. I don't know what position it would be best to do that in. I don't know if I want to mount that horizontally or keep it vertical. I don't know. I'll see how it works. But I'm going to see if I can get some of those little tips off first, because the more I take off, the less grinding I have to do, which is just very tedious. That is the hole roughed out. I've used my grinding wheel to get myself a basic round hole. Now I am going to put the flap wheel in to clean it up, deburr the edge because I don't want the edge to be sharp. So at the moment I have the world's deadliest donut. So now I have to figure out how I want to hold this boss in place. Now and the reason I saved this piece on one of those holes was to test this theory. So the idea was to use this little bracket from this little bag right here and use them to hold this in place. And it does in fact function. It's not uber tight, but there would be 8 of these. So it would hold it in place, but not well. Now, the best method, of course, would be to put it from the underneath and then bolt it in place. But that would entail making this thing that big. And I am really not looking forward to doing that. Getting this hole in this thing was a bit of a chore, and I really don't want to have to make it any larger. It's the right size at the minute for my hand, and I don't want to make it any bigger unless I have to. So the problem is that I don't know how I'm going to hold it in place. Now, if this was a bigger flange, like if it was, you know, a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch, obviously I could just drill through it and then use bolts or pop rivets and boom, you know, before you know it, Bob's your uncle. But this method will work, it's just really complex. And when you have a really complex thing and you have to do 8 of these really complex things, that's asking for a lot of failure points. And if you hit them with something, they may come loose and suddenly your boss is flapping in the wind. Not ideal. So what I really need is some curved sections of metal that are that diameter. It wouldn't have to be really wide. You know, maybe an inch, maybe less. 4 of them, say that wide, that I could then put in place, and then even 3 of them, and put 2 screws in each one, and that would hold it in place. But that would mean I'd have to take, like, strapping like that, shape it to the size I want, because it has to meet this curve. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. It would be a lot easier if I had something that was already curved and use that, but I don't know what that would be. I've got this thing here, which, you know, it's got holes in it. They're not great holes, admittedly. I could cut from point to point and end up with these sections. And these 3 have 2 holes each. And then I could curve it a little, because if I cut on the outside, so I go from that point to that point, that gives me a little bit of beef to work with. Curve that, and then those become my hold down clamps. I just have 3 of them set 120 degrees apart from each other. You know, 360 degrees in a circle, divided by 3, 120 degrees apart from each other. That's not a horrible idea. It is a little on the ugly side. But can I run with that idea and make something that's a little more attractive? Dig around my stuff, see if I've got some flat stock that I could turn into clamps like that. That would only have to be shaped on one side. If I only have to put a curve on one side to match this radius, that's a lot simpler. That's much easier. And if each one's got 2 bolts, or 2 rivets, depending how I want to do it, I may try one of each and see if I like it. You can always drill a rivet out pretty easy. They're aluminum. Yeah. Alright, let's go dig around and see if I've got some metal I can turn into some clamps. Because this method that I originally came up with is just, it's too weak and it's too complex. So now I got a bag of clips. I got no idea what I'm going to do with them at this point. Maybe they'll find a use in a future build. But they were only like $3, less than $3, so it wasn't much of an investment. Alright, Okay, start digging through my stuff and see if I have things that I can turn into clamps now. Woo-wee, lucky me. I made 4 instead of 3 because laying out 4 brackets in a cross is easier than laying out 3 brackets 120 degrees apart from each other. Also, it's more secure. So these are fairly close to the same size. This is not the final shape, but while they're rectangular, it will be far easier to hold them so I could shape them. So what I need to do is shape them just a little so that they can form to that curve. So I don't have to take a lot off. I want to get the curve in there. So if I get the curve in there and I'm happy with it, I can then figure out what I want is the final shape. And I'm thinking I may just go trapezoidal. So I may just cut these corners off and make them a trapezoid. That's a cool enough shape. And it should be small enough that it'll still be small enough that I can still get it on the shield itself. I just want to lighten up the object. So if I can do that, that will be cool. And if I use 2 screws, 2 bolt holes on each, I'm not going to have to worry about them doing this. So a single one, you could get slop like that. 2 holes, you can't get that kind of a slop. So I will lay out the holes in this after I have the curve done. So next I'm going to do a curve. I don't know if using the grinding wheel would be the best one. I kind of have to lay the curve out on the piece first. I guess that's what I should do first. Draw the curve on the piece, then maybe grind to that curve so I can get it to fit that. And I'll probably just use the bowl itself as the template for the curve. Because again, it's not a huge distance, but I want to get that curve in there. And then again, I can lighten it up so it looks a lot neater and tidier. That will be... It's not going to be elegant when I'm done, but it's going to be interesting. Now the downside to all this is how do I attach the handle? Because my original idea was to have 4 or 8 clips and then 2 of them would just be the bolt holes for the handle. Does that mean I have to drill 10 holes? 10 holes is a lot of holes. 10 holes is a lot of holes. Can I get away with 1 hole? I can get away with making the brackets pointier if I just do 1. Much pointier. I could make them points. All right, let's get the curve in there first. Oh, that's a block I used in here so I could get them even, and I just ground them flat with a flap wheel so they're the same size. So yeah, let's get the curve in there first, and then we'll worry about the size and shape and see if form follows function. By the gods, it worked. So this one is complete. I have put a curve. I think I have to deburr the back a little bit more. Though, let's be honest, if the back's not deburred, who's going to care when I'm done? It's going to be bolted to something. You're never going to notice it. But that's what they're going to look like as far as the curve is concerned. So now I need to do the other 3, which will have to happen tomorrow because I'm getting a little tired. I actually have a 2-day weekend. I'm so thrilled. So that's going to be the next step. And when that step is done, I think I am going to go with points. Dunk, dunk. And put it... Well, I'll drill the hole first because I can do the layout a whole lot easier when it's a rectangle. Doing a layout when it's a rectangle is much, much simpler. Finding the center and everything, it's a lot easier. So drill the hole and then cut the shape and then do the layout on the blade for the 4 holes that I will need to do. And that means I will not have to worry about this because the handle will just be passing through 2 of the points. So there'll be 2 points on either side of the bowl, and on the other side, that's what will be holding the handle in place. Easy peasy. All right, this is coming together. This is almost like I know what I'm doing. It's kind of scary. All the curves have been ground onto the clamps, and I have done all the layout, and I've brightened up the my set marks for my drill bit so you can actually see it. So that's where the holes are going to be. And then I'll cut off those corners after I drill the holes, because obviously holding a roughly rectangular object is a heck of a lot easier than holding a triangular object, which is half the size. So I'll drill the holes first, and when that's done, it's time to take off the corners and then shape, polish, and all that happy horse puck so they look relatively uniform and reasonable. And then it's going to be laying out where I want the holes on the saw blade itself. And I'm going to do that one at a time. So I'm going to lay out one hole, drill it, clamp it, and then lay out the next hole, because there's no way I'm going to be able to lay out these all at once and have them be anywhere close where I want them to be. So it's very much going to have to be one hole at a time. I'll probably do one, then the opposite, then do the cross that way, because this is going to be very tedious. But that's the only way I can do it and have a reasonable chance of getting them to be at 90 degrees to each other and actually hold the thing in place. The clips are complete, so now you're getting a look at how they're actually going to operate. So I am now going to center this. I'll take some measurements, and then I will locate that exactly where I want it. I will clamp it, and then I will put a mark through that center hole, through that 1/4 inch hole into the blade. I will brighten that mark up with my nail set, because the punches I use are not going to make a lot of difference in this hard steel. This is not messing around. This is pretty hard stuff. And then I'll again probably brighten up some more with some ink. And then once I get all four, then it's to get my carbide drill bit out and start drilling holes. And when I get those done, then it's going to be figuring out what the handle's how long the handle has to be, cutting that to size, deburring it, drilling holes in that based on what is in the blade already, and then wrapping and assembly. Wrapping the handle and then assembly. So we are getting closer to the end. So 6 holes left. 4 hard ones, and then I believe that steel that I'm using for the handle is pretty soft, so that shouldn't be hard to drill. Okay, so time to take some measurements, center this boss, and get these holes marked. It's a bit of a mess at the minute, but all the holes are drilled. I just reused the hole that was already there. It was very convenient. I only had to drill one hole. And now I have to put a wrap between those 2 marks. And then it's assembly. So the wrap, and then everything gets bolted together. I will be using cap nuts, these little acorn nuts right here. So I may have to shave down some of these screws, these bolts rather, to get them to be the right height. Because with a cap nut, you know, a standard nut like this, doesn't matter how long the thing is, it just keeps going. But with the cap nut, you're limited because there is a cap on it. So I have to make sure the bolt is the right size so that it will tighten down and not bottom out. Because if the nut bottoms out, it's not actually applying proper pressure. So you need to make sure that you have the right length bolt with a cap nut. And since 2 of these are going to be different, because this one's going to have 3 layers of metal and these 2 will only have 2 layers of metal, I'm going to have to make 2 different sets of bolts. That's simple. It's just a matter of polishing them down on my belt sander so they're the right size. That is not a big deal. But I'm going to wrap that up, and then it's assembly time. Well, there is the completed buckler, and I am really happy with this. This looks awesome. Here we go. So here we go, the back side. Still got some marks on the back from my marker, but I don't really care if it's got marks on the back. You don't see those in the front. And I put the rustier side on the out, facing out, because I like the patina. I like the look of that, juxtaposed against the shiny steel. That came out quite nice. The handle could be a smidge thicker, just a smidge. But, you know, I'm not actually going to use this in combat, so I'm not going to worry about it a whole lot. Like this outside is okay because you've got the line under here, you know, from tightening it. But if it were a little bit thicker on the inside, probably be a smidge comfier. But there you go. Not only can you block with it, do everything dynamically you want with a buckler. If you've ever seen somebody use a buckler, they are very dynamic. But with this particular version, you can also strike someone with that edge, and that would very much hurt. Not to mention, maybe perchance catching an incoming edge on a sword and binding it long enough to, or an axe or something, binding it long enough to hurt the person that is trying to harm you. So yeah, this is a project that took quite a bit of work. Getting that hole and getting all those, drilling all that stuff through that hard steel was a real pain in the butt. I'm thinking about the next one I have to do, I may just anneal the steel in the area other than the edge and see if I can get to soften it up a little. I'd contemplating doing this one, annealing this blade, but my propane torch didn't function. I'm like, sigh. So I gotta get a new propane tank to see if the propane tank's the problem, because I just got a new propane head. So yeah, at the moment I don't have a lighter. I had like 3 of them. I can't find them. What a shock. I can't find something. But yeah, real happy with this buckler. It came out very nice. So outside now to get some pictures for this video and some stills for my DeviantArt page and Instagram. And if you don't follow me on DeviantArt and Instagram, you should, because I am a very entertaining person. Alright, so thank you for being here for this build. I appreciate your attention, and I hope that you will be here for the next one.